Have you been feeling blue lately? Don't worry, so have I. The season's changing. And in this lovely drab fall atmosphere, that thing stands out like a giant pustule out here. Let's take a look at the new Corolla hatchback. Now, when I did a video on the last generation Corolla, I had to go to the doctor afterwards because I developed a problem with narcolepsy. And it was because I spent about 3 hours filming that car and driving it. And found out really there was nothing wrong with it other than it was just straight up boring. And this generation Corolla fixes pretty much every single problem that I possibly had with it. It was a really good car, and you make excuses for the reliability, practicality, fuel economy, and all the things that Corolla's known for, but it just didn't have much style. Look at it. When you slap this paint color on it, it makes me just want to have a dance party, which I'm not going to do. I don't need to blow out a knee. Now let's get in here. You know, my buddy Jack, Singapore, he's getting himself a Corvette, and I told him, well, I'll tell you what, I'll get you a belt clip for your cell phone when you're driving that thing. He's like, well, now that I'm getting a real car, I need something that I can drive every day that's practical. And that's exactly what it's time to do, is to take this Corolla, fire it up, and get the hell on the road. I am setting off in the brand new Corolla Hatchback XSE. What does that mean? That means we're in the premium model. Let's get right into it. When I first saw this, namely in this color, I got in a parking lot and I thought it was the last generation Mazda hatchback with this blue paint color. And it's just so strikingly familiar until you see it in like black or another color, and then it has its own personality. And I think from an exterior standpoint, and I talked about this in the previous Corolla video I did, there's nothing wrong with that car. In fact, it's probably what you would buy if you didn't want to spend a lot of money, you wanted it to last forever and have good resale value. The biggest problem with it was it had no character. It had no personality. In this day and age, if you're spending $20,000 on a car, I really don't care what you're spending, it better be really well-rounded. And this is the first Corolla I've been in where there is literally zero trade-off in pretty much any respect for an affordable car. It does everything extremely well. And when you look at the exterior design, it's something that you probably would look back at and say, that's not so boring. It appeals to many people, and they do it without looking totally juvenile. So it's going to appeal to somebody who's younger. The older people that want an efficient car aren't going to scoff at it either. It's just really well balanced. But a lot of that is subjective. You know, you may hate the way it looks. I don't know. The interior space is really where Toyota has improved so much over the past generations. When you get in here and you look at the upper dash textures, this black with kind of the stitching, the grayish middle dash textures, and just even the center stack and the entire center console area feels really high quality. This does not feel like some budget car, and it really isn't at this price point. You get a lot for your money here. The steering wheel design is great. The HVAC controls have their own temperature display, fan speed display, so you don't have to rely on the touch screen. All the touch points, all the plastics look good. The armrest is adjustable. There's so much good on this interior space that I can't imagine too many people complaining about it at this price point, despite there being a ton of competition. The seat design is excellent. It has seat heaters. There's a fabric center or back section, and the rest is kind of this pleatherish material, and you would never guess it's not leather. The comfort overall is great in the front and the back seats, and I've really, really enjoyed driving this car for the most part. Now, there are a couple negative parts about the interior space. The first thing is, you know, manufacturers are obsessed with sticking screens on the dashboard, and they're doing it because it's cheaper to stick a screen up here than to mold the entire dashboard to fit a screen in it. And, you know, it just always looks really cheap and very just afterthought to me. And then you have all the shiny black plastic on it, and on the center console area, which I really don't like. But the overall button and ergonomic design here is really, really good. There's so much good that I can kind of forgive some of that. And that's really one of the worst parts about the interior, aside from this dashboard piece. If you look at the center section of the dash, I don't know why the molding has to stick out as far as it does. In fact, it sticks out so far that I bang my knee into the corner of this a lot when I'm getting in and out. And unless there's some type of dash support beam behind it, I don't understand the reasoning. But that's really it about the interior space. I mean, everything works just tremendously well here. This is definitely the best driving Corolla I've ever been in. And it balances comfort and just kind of fun to drive that they've never been able to do before. And a lot of this has to do with the underpinnings. The architecture that it's built on is so good this generation. And I can't even tell you I have one complaint with the ride quality. Yes, it is a little bit softer. They're not trying to overly spring this. It's not bumpy or jarring, but it still has the good ride control, the softer ride without feeling like a total couch. You can still pound it around a turn. If you're in a mountainous area, you could still drive it with confidence. But I think one of the biggest things to talk about is transmission. And I think, if you're not somebody that cares about the technical aspects of cars, this has a CVT. But I'm going to get into it a little bit more in depth so you understand, and the people that are more into cars can understand what's happening here. So I'm going to come up to a stop, and the way they've designed the CVT is to give you a physical first gear. So when you set off, there's not this massive amount of lag that you have with traditional CVTs, so it doesn't feel like you're driving a total turd. You accelerate, so it gets you off the line in a physical first gear. Second gear transitions into a CVT, and then all the subsequent gears are that way. And one of the nicer parts about it is I would say a huge amount of the public would never notice it's a CVT. There are times when you kind of get on it, it will kind of hold revs and you feel it accelerating, but the revs are still kind of staying there, but it does a really good job at faking that it's an automatic transmission. Now, the next part of that is it has paddle shifters. And I know everybody that hates CVTs is going to be like, oh my God, here we go. But let me give you an example. So really what it's doing is the only time you're not going to get a quick shift is from first to second as that transitions from normal to CVT. The other gears will shift extremely quick when you're in sport mode. So it gives you that level of fun to drive. And if you want to drive quickly or hardcore, it will do it really well. And when you turn off sport mode and you leave it in automatic, it does an amazing job at simulating a torque converted automatic with 10 gears. And, I think even if you're not into this car, get out, actually drive this. I'd be curious to see what people thought getting behind the wheel and really exploring the transmission, because I honestly think this is one of the best CVTs I've ever driven. And a lot of people have tried, but this is one of definitely the coolest designs that I've seen. Now, let's be real, most people don't care about that stuff. That transmission's a big part of the drivetrain, obviously. The engine is just peppy enough. Somebody asked me, well, is it as slow as the CHR? This is nothing like the CHR. This is extremely quick for what it is. It feels peppy, and I'm still getting good fuel efficiency, right around the 28 to 29 miles per gallon range, and that's kind of beating it up. And I think that's what you can kind of expect if you're more of an animal behind the wheel. But if you're not, and you're just putting around, you'll probably get in the 30s. But let's get underneath of this car and take a look at the architecture and see if there's anything interesting. Now there's only so much driving you can do before you have to look at the underbody. And in this case, this is the third or fourth Toyota now I've seen with the new TNGA architecture, which is this entire body structure. What they're doing is they're taking one modular platform and they can adjust little things and make different cars out of it. And as you would expect, if you do it right, all the cars should be good. It's more efficient to make, more cost effective, and you can make more cars and update them much easier. If you have to make one major change because, well, something's wrong with damping and the bushings aren't right, you don't have to go through and remanufacture a whole bunch of different things. And it's the super smart way to do cars that are being made in the hundreds of thousands. And that's really what this is about, or even millions. So Toyota's got this right, and I said this about other cars. It is so refined, it's so smooth, and it is great to drive and pretty quiet overall. This car is no different. Now, this is not some sporty, aggressive platform. It's not designed to be. It's from driving from point A to point B. So you have strut-based front suspension. Your entire subframe here, all stamped steel lower control arms. The hubs are all steel. I mean, there's no aluminum, there's no weight savings here, but in the case of this car, not really needed. You're building it to a price point. The XSE with a manual transmission, which you can get a 6-speed manual, is about $22,000, and you still get a lot for your money here. Now, this has the CVT, which I'll go into in a minute, but let's take a look at the back. Now, if you've ever driven the previous generation Corolla hatch or Auris, which was the Scion IM in America, there's some big differences between the two cars, this new generation and the old one. And I didn't do a video on the Scion IM because, frankly, I like the interior, I like the exterior, but I hated the manual transmission on that car. I just did not like it at all, and I thought the car, I just didn't understand why they released it at the end of the generation. So let's talk about the differences between the two. Here you have a multi-link rear. Again, all stamped steel. You can see the trailing arm, the lower control arms, the upper control arms. Again, multi-link. I believe the Scion IM had a double wishbone rear suspension. This retains all its Japanese manufacturing. And for the most part, the biggest thing you're going to notice back here and along this whole car is the body adhesives, the sealers, and the undercoating is really good on here. And I'm starting to look at that more and more on cars and appreciating it, like pinch points, welds, all that. It's very well done and clean. Now, the last thing to talk about is this underbelly is really covered up here, namely for a car in this price range. And you know, a lot of manufacturers are using these plastic panels or asphalt panels along there to flow the air out the back. And the one thing that's a little bit different about the Corolla is you can see it in the front, it's all covered all the way along the sides, but these plastic panels really extend over the trailing arm, one of the control arms, and really flow air very well over these lower control arms out the back of this car. And even you can see where the covers are on the back and the way this muffler is designed. It's obviously to reduce drag, but it also has the aid of making it quiet. Even though this is a hatch, it's not crazy loud in the back like some of the other cars I've driven. But let's take a look under the hood. I'll talk about the trans and the motor. Under the hood of the next generation Corolla lies Toyota's brand new 2-liter. And believe it or not, Toyota has been behind in the 4-cylinder game until now. It's taken them a while, but this is one of their first motors with dual injection, port and direct. And one of the best things about that is it eliminates some of the maintenance headaches you get with direct injection only, if the company does not know how to tune for it or do the head design. So since Toyota's been doing dual injection pretty much before anybody else, and it's trickled down from their Lexus lineup, and they virtually have no problems with this. Now, there is some added complexity to it because you have 8 fuel injectors, 4-port, 4 direct. So you have that, but pretty much everything here is logically laid out. You can get to your coil packs. Your cam-driven high-pressure fuel pump is right here. The things that you probably need to get to are all here. And then the fact that Toyota still has not turbocharged this means that this is a car that you're going to be able to keep for quite a long time and not have to deal with, well, turbo leaks down the road or oil leaks or bearing problems with that or extra heat. They don't have to worry about all the packaging with turbo, and you still have a high compression motor that takes regular fuel. You could still put regular gas in here, still get pretty decent fuel efficiency, and the motor is really smooth compared to the last generation one. So really, obviously this is new. I can't speak to how it's going to be in 5 years from now, but for the most part, as an engine builder, they've done a great job. Now, in terms of the transmission, Toyota keeps pushing the boundaries and pushing them. And one of their latest things is trying to have automatics and manuals that have this rhythmic shifting. And they talked about this in the LC, their high-end Lexus. With this iCVT or the CVT, I'm sorry, it's not an iCVT, it's a direct shift CVT that has a gear for first, and then it takes over from first gear to second to 10th with simulated gears. It's all CVT from second to 10. You can control this via paddles, as you saw in the driving section, or you just let it go in full automatic. Between the belt design, the actuator design, and the way that the logic controls the pulley changes, it's so fast that this has to be one of the best CVTs you're ever going to drive. And I think the other one I said was the Kia Forte really impressed me. But they've gotten the shift logic so well, they've gotten the mechanical design so well that there is, in terms of drivability, I really don't see the trade-offs here compared to a conventional torque-converted automatic. And in some cases, it's better than those because it's just quicker to respond. But regardless, you still have a manual transmission option. So if you're phobic of this, you know, you're gonna really appreciate having those too. But let's get to the final thoughts. Final thoughts on the new Corolla hatch. I spent a lot of time in this video trying to make it digestible for the mainstream people who are looking for this as a shopping tool to help them buy a real car, and that's what it is. Hopefully some of the technical info helped as well. Now, onto this. The compact segment is very competitive. These cars have gotten really good. The new Civic hatch, aside from some of its looks, is a great driving car. The Mazda 3, even though it's older, is a great hatchback. The Hyundai Kia offerings are equally as good, but there's something about this Toyota that stands out for me, and that is you can tell there's a high level of engineering to make this not only reliable, efficient, but good to drive and quiet. Composite rear hatch, aluminum hood, the engine design with dual injection, the way that the interior quality is, the fit and finish, the overall drivability, the amount of money that they spent on the CVT and then offering a manual transmission. They are literally trying to make this as appealing as possible without taking too many shortcuts. And I think that's why it works so well for me. This drives great. I would have no problem driving this every day, and this is a car, one of those few that I would be totally okay with going in and financing it or buying it with cash, because this is a car that's going to serve you really well, probably for at least 10 years if you don't ball it up or there's not some major mechanical problem with it. Really enjoyed driving this car. Now on to some of the other things. The safety systems work pretty well. The beeping is so annoying, like most Toyotas, when you, like the lane departure warnings. I mean, some of those things are quirky. The infotainment is still not the best. I just can't fathom why they can't get this right, but it's just still clumsy to use compared to the other brands. But pretty much everything else but that is top notch. Definitely take a look at this car if you're shopping for it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.